Ross, welcome to SuperLead podcast.
Good. Thanks so much for the privilege of being here. I really appreciate it.
Lovely, lovely. I think we are the ones who feel honored, and you are properly, smartly dressed, and I feel like I wasn't ready, but then I realized I'm talking to someone in this tourism and hospitality world. I should have been a little bit more prepared.
Well, you've got to dress up because it's difficult to dress up this pig, huh?
We want to dive straight in, and in this podcast, we love to hear the story in its fullness, and we like to kind of start as early as possible to just sort of learn from your journey. If you could take us, just a story of how you started from as early as you can remember, maybe you highlight one or two areas of some learnings and highlights, possibly some lowlights, but from as early as possible to where you are today as the managing director of MSC Cruise South Africa.
So I think given the nature of the podcast and you want access to leaders, authenticity for me is one of the key characteristics. But I think for me, I was quite blessed to have grown up in an environment where obviously in Zimbabwe and then South Africa, I had the opportunity to see both sort of cultural aspects. My parents were fairly conservative, but also spoke a lot about the value system that underpins what I do today, which was equality, fairness. They always looked to challenge the status quo of the message that was out there in the general public about what society was trying to conform to. So, I learned to speak Ndebele and Shona at home by people talking to me and learning the cultural aspects and respects there. And that was encouraged by my parents at the time. And I think that has underpinned quite a very, sort of into the leadership roles I fulfill today has stood me well. And also having a very strong friend base that's not afraid to tell me the truth.
Sure.
I had a friend that I lamented about some challenges with the world I faced once, and he looked at me and said to me, Ross, I love you very much and I'll always support you, but the world doesn't have a problem. You do. And if you want to have a conversation with me, let's talk about it. And I put the phone down, and then I phoned him back and I said to him, okay, but what do you mean? And he explained it to me and he said, this is the case. I said, all right, how do we fix this? So I think again, one of the things as a good, effective leader, you need to surround yourself with people that are going to provide honest assessments. They're not going to give you accolades for no apparent reason. You need people that are supportive, but you also need people that are going to give you the fair reflection. I studied to be a chartered accountant. I am a CA by profession.
I love the early lessons already, but I want to just kind of go at a factual level.
Sure.
Where did you grow up in Zimbabwe? How does
I moved to Zimbabwe in 1994, from Zimbabwe in 1994. And then I came to South Africa, finished my schooling here, went to Wits, and then carried on with my articles.
Right. And what did your parents do in Zimbabwe?
My dad's an engineer and my mom is in marketing. So, I realized one thing, I didn't want to be an engineer.
So the trigger to come to South Africa was largely to further your studies?
No, I think it was more a question of opportunities for the family. I was still very young. I was still sort of in my teenage years. So it was more a decision that was thrust upon me. We came down. I finished my high schooling and then did my university and carried on. So, I'm old. This gray hair here is not wrong.
Okay, then you pursued the noblest career in being a CA, and you did that, I think, until senior manager role.
Yeah, I then was a senior manager at KPMG for 9 years, and then I left in 2015 in varying forms. I did a lot of traveling overseas, development, compliance, audits, and then I left to go overseas. I left KPMG 2015, came to MSC in 2015 as well, and then carried on from there. And I've been with MSC ever since.
Sure. And so from a long career at KPMG, I imagine in audit space, largely, in the transition to then be on the other side, being a CFO?
I think from an auditor to a CFO, obviously you just see the other side of the coin in terms of the conversation. But your key change focus is less about compliance in terms of the actual like day to day, and more looking at the commerciality of your decisions factoring in the ethics and good corporate governance that you always have to, but your focus shifts towards that commerciality, obviously leading the team in terms of making sure that you've got the compliance with all the accounting space, but your role there is to support the CEO in terms of making the decisions so that the numbers make sense for you to go and to make the correct decision based on the facts that are available.
Okay. And then after that, you took on the MD role for MSC Cruise. So companies like MSC Cruise, they are not generally like the ones in your face, where someone is a CA and then aspiring to go lead MSC Cruise. I just wonder what sort of drawn you to that environment.
Yeah, so I think a lot of CAs that join the organizations want to go into banking and
Yes.
and all the sort of flashy kind of environments that they have. Insurance is a good example.
Yes.
I wanted something different, and I think because of my diversified career within KPMG, I didn't only do audits of financial services and insurers. I did industrial and fast-moving consumer goods. I looked at compliance. I did international training. I spent a better part of 4 years out of the country in New York, London, Prague, doing work for the global firm. So that, gave me a very different and diversified portfolio in terms of what I was looking at. And that meant that I didn't necessarily have to pigeonhole myself into one kind of industry. I would have loved to have gone into insurance or banking. I think it just happened that the opportunity presented itself, and it was a good fit for me. I liked the culture. I liked the environment. The sort of appeal of the business in terms of growing with it was something that was very positive for me. And as a result, I selected to go and be the CFO of MSC, and they were grateful enough to accept me. They could have said, "Well, you're a banking guy. Why are you coming here?" They were very, very gracious in accepting me as their CFO.
Excellent. Now, I love the background. I'm just curious, when you reflect in the years, what has always worked for you, where you say, I lead well when I do the following. This is sort of my leadership toolkit, if it were. And I think you're starting to allude to that earlier. But maybe just to kind of highlight 3 or 4 of these leadership principles that work for Ross.
Sure. Well, I think it's a privilege that I'm here because I wouldn't consider myself to be a great leader. And I think I've made a lot of mistakes in the 20-odd years that I've been working. And I think a couple of things that are fundamental from that leadership perspective that I could try and pass on is you're always going to make mistakes. You need to learn from them. Sure. Saying sorry is not necessarily a sign of weakness. It's often a sign of strength in terms of realizing that you've made a mistake. Clearly, communicating is a fundamental axis that you need to have. So you've got to be able to communicate well. And then I think also the ability to understand different people's perspectives. As we all have prejudice, we all have, these preconceived ideas about what someone or something or some company looked like. It's a question of actually trying to understand, do I really understand what the crux of the matter is, what I refer to the disease in any kind of discussion we have is, am I getting to the root cause of the problem, or am I just top dressing, and identifying the symptoms? So, it would be the communication aspect. It would be the ability to see the other side and seek first to understand before being understood. The ability to say sorry, I think, is an incredible one. And then you are going to make mistakes, learn from them, and grow from those particular areas. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you're not going to make mistakes, you're not going to go anywhere.
Sure. Stunning. Love this. And maybe we just layer in a perspective on the service industry. People listening to us, some of them might be in the service industry. Some might actually be in, say, manufacturing or otherwise. I just wonder, your view on how the service industry, tourism, hospitalities, how has it evolved in your perspective, and what could we be expecting in the future?
I think a great amount of respect has to be shown to people that are front-facing with the general public these days, because with the advent of social media, the advent of fast-paced communications and delivery, you get this instantaneous feedback which isn't always balanced, and so your front-facing staff, the receptionist at your hotels, your taxi drivers, your Uber drivers, your restaurateurs, all of those kind of things, that they face quite a big challenge in this environment in terms of what's available or the amount of information that people are available to consume. So, certainly that means that our compassion, our understanding, our communication has to be at the forefront of what we're trying to achieve, because otherwise we're not going to deliver the product offering that we have. And looking at all the challenges that the world faces as well, this misinformation and the truth is very difficult to find. And when we saw last week in the Oval Office, President Trump sort of ambushing President Ramaphosa on a couple of issues that, while there are potentially indicators, are not necessarily true, or the facts differ from what the conjecture is. But people will take that as fact rather than kind of looking at it. So, as a leader within that space and also the people working in here, I think there's a lot of respect for the front-facing individuals in the consumer, in hospitality, service industry. But communication will then be the critical success factor in identifying what the root cause of it is. Because you could come shouting and screaming at me saying you're unhappy with a cruise you went on, or you'll talk to one of my staff. But the real issue wasn't necessarily what you're talking about. The real issue is something else. And it's the ability to read that person to say, what is your real problem? Because if I address that, then this will all go away. And it could be respect. It could be it was bad. It could be whatever the scenario is. It's really about, communicating effectively and managing the expectations clearly.
Sure. Oh, that is stunning. That's insightful. And I just wonder, because I think we grew up in the culture of the customer is always right. So if you're being bombarded with like customer views that are in your words are not necessarily balanced, do you always have to kind of assume they are right, take their side, whether or not there is taking a side of an employee, or I just wonder how you navigate some of these old
So any of these
views.
statements for me hold true only when the principle exists for both parties. So customer is king when honesty is at play. If you've legitimately got a problem, then I believe that is the actual reality. You've paid for a service. You need to get that service. And if you didn't get it, then quite frankly, we've made the mistake and we need to rectify the scenario. But in this day and age, there is an element of arbitrage that people are trying to get ahead and trying to manage. And that becomes very difficult. For me, it's privately supporting every employee. They need to know that I support them and that I have their back. But also there's a commercial aspect that we need to consider. And I don't believe that there's ever a right or wrong. It's a consideration of our perspective, your perspective, how we manage that, and reaching a collaboration for a solution that benefits both parties. And as I said, if we're wrong, that's wrong in inverted commas in terms of we've made the mistake or something hasn't been according to plan, then we need to obviously look at it in terms of that and look at our collaboration in light of that particular issue. But this blanket statement of, the customer is always king is right if both parties are honest. And not seeking rent-seeking or arbitrage.
Sure. Very good, very good. Now, you have traveled over 75 countries, I imagine, from your early years as well as the nature of your work. And I just wonder if there's additional sort of perspective you can sort of lay over to inform your leadership, just largely based on just exposure to many cultures and countries, etc.
Yeah, I think it gives you such an avenue to see what the world truly looks like. So, if someone's only been in South Africa, for example, they will look at things and say, South Africa is good or bad, depending on what their perspective is. Okay. What traveling does for me is it allows you the opportunity to see what the other side looks like, because people are always going to tell you the good news story. Oh, the UK is the best place in the world, or the US is this, land of milk and honey, or Nigeria is an amazing place to go, or it's a horrible place. Whatever their subtle nuance is to that space, seeing it for your own eyes, experiencing is invaluable in your interpretation of the world, and it allows you to form an opinion that while we are very different in many cases, we actually are the same. So it allows you the opportunity. When I spoke about seek first to understand, is I have the opportunity to understand. We had a conversation about you being vendor before and the situation. What do I know about that culture? What do I know about vendor people and the language from my travels? And you could then say, what do I know about Italians from their culture and their language? What do I know about Swahili-speaking people from East Africa? It allows you the opportunity to at least understand potentially why people say and do things in different fashions. And I'll use a simple example. You know, within our African culture, when you place your hand on your arm here, it's almost like a sign of ultimate respect. You know, if you were shaking someone's hand or thanking them, you would do this. In Italian culture, this means basically Foxtrot Oscar. You know, it's a swear word because you're pointing out the space. So if you were doing that inadvertently with someone, you would be offending them before you started. Whereas traveling allows you that opportunity to embrace that culture and understand it and give us a basis for starting a conversation. Because while we might be different, we're also the same. So what are the similarities that I can start to talk to you about that allows us to create a rapport? And then we can start to see that actually the differences that we did have are not so different. And we can talk and deal with them. And we can agree to agree to be different, but move on mutual respect in terms of that space. So I think that traveling just allows you that opportunity. And as I said, I've seen some wonderful cultures that I've aligned with. I've seen some cultures that I haven't. But it's all embraced in the mixture of what experiences I have in this world that allow me then to realize how I'm going to go and interact with people and how I'm going to engage with them from the start.
Lovely. I imagine there's a recommendation there that if people are thinking about what to do with their bonuses, they must consider traveling.
I think travel is part and parcel of what everyone should do in the world. And part of our problems globally, I think, is the fact that we are rooted in what we believe is right, but we don't know what the truth is, and we haven't seen it for our own eyes.
Sure. Oh, lovely. Now, talking the industry, I'm always curious as I engage with leaders, how they managed the COVID times. And I think specifically for tourism and the world you're in, do you want to just kind of just open a window for us to kind of see how was it like? How did you receive the first news? What happened? What was the exco meetings like?
So I've got PTSD from this. So if I start twitching, it's just an involuntary response. Excuse me. COVID was horrible for everyone, but for travel businesses, I think it was very existential. Sure. Many businesses, I think, went to the wall. We were blessed in that we're part of a big diversified group that had abilities to manage certain weather storms, but that didn't make it any less challenging. I mean, we had at the time, I think 20-odd thousand crew stranded on vessels around the world because they couldn't go anywhere. So now we had to repatriate those crew members. It was one of the most intricate experiences of my life. I mean, in South Africa, we had a lady from Kyrgyzstan, and I'll allow the listeners the opportunity to go and look where Kyrgyzstan is. It's lies in between Mongolia, China, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan, up there in the far eastern reaches of the world. Okay, and you had to get this poor person who had such a heartfelt story back to her family without staying in one place for more than 24 hours. So the journey for her was Durban to Johannesburg, Johannesburg to Doha, Doha to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Minsk in Belarus. From there, they went to Azerbaijan, Baku, and then from there, they went to Bishkek, which is the capital of Kyrgyzstan. But, having to do that was incredible. I think it was also positive from the fact that I got to spend a disproportionate amount of time with the global chairman and the global CEO of the business managing these problems, and got to learn from them in terms of their experiences of crisis and how to manage it. It certainly was a lesson in, make sure that your redundancies are in place, make sure that you've also got good lines of relationships and communications. I must say that I was impressed at the time with SAA in terms of the best airline in the entire world to repatriate our crew. And they were brilliant at it. And also from the Department of Transport and Tourism, were quite collaborative in terms of wanting to try and assist the travel industry within that space. So they also did quite well. And I think it was a valuable lesson that, not everything you hear about a department or a company is true, because you have to experience it.
Sure.
So it was very difficult. And I think that espoused also the communication imperative of a leader. Is, we used to hold, I used to hold town halls in South Africa. I explained clearly and transparently what I was doing and why I was doing it, so that people understood exactly what the situation was. And I wanted to come back to the office as soon as possible, but I had to bear in mind that there were people that were high risk. There were people that couldn't. There were people that couldn't travel and transport themselves. So we had to look at how that worked. And it was then an understanding of what are we going to do safely to bring it back. So the communication was very vital in that stage for me. But it was very, very difficult. And it was probably one of the hardest periods of my career, that 18 months, because every turn it was looking at, are we going to operate? Do we have any money? I'm paying out all this money and I'm seeing no income coming in for 2 years.
Sure.
So it was very, very concerning and very challenging. And that's probably where I aged and look like I'm 100 now. But certainly had some silver linings in terms of the communication, the learning from leaders who've been there, done that potentially in other stressful situations, how calm they remained and how that worked. It was really great. But it was a lesson that I hope not to learn again.
Yes, please. Yes, please. And at this point, were you sort of still optimistic that, this thing will end, we will go back to business, hopefully it might even be better? Or it was just bad news after bad news after another strain after another strain?
I think I'd said to the CFO in January, February of that year, I said to him, there's problems coming. Let's make sure that we've rectified ourselves financially so that we can be as independent as possible within the corporate governance rules, that we are not dependent on someone else. So we did that, and I anticipated that we would have until the December that we would be okay. I was wrong by 18 months. But there was that preparation from my side to say we need to look at how we're going to manage this, because we've got a problem. And I think in the early days, I think there was less frustration because you thought it was going to end, and there was always hope that it was going to end quickly. And then as things sort of deepened into 2020, and there wasn't a lot of respite into the last part of the year, I think then sort of things started to look a little bit darker, and required a lot of resilience in the way in which you led. Was, where people looking for you for answers, where are we going? What are we doing? Are our jobs safe? And to the credit of the organization, we stood by the family values and we didn't retrench anyone during the period. And I think we supported people really well. And that was the great leadership from head office that sort of we learned from. And I really respected and appreciated their pragmatic approach to that. But, people looking to you for answers. Ross, what's your comment? You think we're going to operate? I don't know. And you've got to come up with an answer that engenders confidence in people. So, you got to do your research. You've got to try and look at it and say, well, I think this is going to happen, or I think this might happen. And this is where I think we're going. And this is how we need to go and manage it. And I kept myself busy trying to look at just one step at a time, just the quick wins from each time, rather than looking too long term. I still had my eye on the long term, and I fought very hard with the South African government to open us up and do it safely. We were the last, so it was a problem, but we managed to do it. And as I said, a lot of lessons learned in that process. Never waste a good crisis, right? You must always learn from those crises and learn how to manage it going forward.
Sure. Wow. And I just wonder, at a personal level now, where you will go to, after another no has been after you've kind of spoken to someone and they say no, we're still closed, and you're processing all of this. I wonder what personally keeps you resilient, hopeful, etc.
I think I faced a lot of adversity in my life. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and I wasn't born into a family that had no problems and a life that had no problems. And everyone's got issues, so it's not about saying, oh, woe is me. But I think that's informed the way in which I've moved through life, and the unwavering determination to succeed.
Sure.
So I want to make myself successful, and I want to be the best,
Yeah.
and I want to do things the right way. So there's that unwavering determination that is there, and that's been borne out through the challenges that have been faced, through some of the hardships that I've experienced, and obviously also the people that I've surrounded myself with. And I think that is part of the secret as well, is that I have a very close-knit amount of friends. I know that everyone looks at these things and says, if you can count the number of friends on your hand, those are true friends. I have very few friends, but the ones I have are real quality people. And
Excellent.
I use those as a sounding board to vent. So after a no, I'd phone someone and I'd jump up and down and scream and shout and, cry and do whatever. And then I'd rectify myself and move on and then say, well, I'm going to succeed, and that's how it's going to work. My partner in life is also a very strong-willed individual, and she's, also a good sounding board to enable me to do it. And I think that's part of the secret as well. Surround yourself with the right people, because they will be the people that will hold you firm and stand by you.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Love that. Congratulations for kind of going through this and emerging victorious on the other side. The COVID situation was tough.
Everybody had this, and I don't think it's right to congratulate one individual. We all succeeded in some form or another. We all faced our personal battles, whether it was running a business, whether it was being an employee, whether it was being self-employed, whether it was being an unfortunate, underprivileged person in a country that didn't have support systems. We all faced the hardships. We all came through it. And hopefully we've learned the lessons, and particularly those charged with governance have learned the lessons to make sure that we don't go to that scenario again. But I think we all did what we needed to do from all the board. Congratulations to the staff that didn't complain. They liked it. They moved forward. The late nights that we had moving crew back, the uncertainty that they faced about their jobs, and they didn't complain. They didn't riot. They didn't do anything. They lived their life by what they did. Though it's a collective for everybody. Rather than congratulations to one person or one organization, in my opinion. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. No. Thank you for that. And that is so very true. So now on this other side of COVID, I imagine the business has gotten back to, we like to say, the pre-COVID levels, if not better. I'm just curious, what does, technology and innovation and all the things that we're seeing in other industries, how does it look like in the tourism space? What does the innovation look like? What are some of the things you're working on that we can expect as innovations in the space?
Well, I think the sort of the buzzword at the moment is AI, and how that will, sort of be either replacement for people or not, an enhancement or whatever the situation. I think for me, again, if we're consciously capitalistic, and that's an important term I want to raise, is I think everyone wants to make money and everyone wants to be wealthy. We need to do it consciously. And I look at it, we have a call center of about 300 people that serves both South Africa and internationally. Could you go and sort of change that with AI? Yes. My personal view is we also have a responsibility to people, because they need to work and they need to earn a living. So how do we integrate that solution to better manage their lives, but also still maintain the fact that they should be party to this conversation? And I strongly feel that we should be looking at AI as a collaboration rather than a replacement. And where we think it's going to replace, I think we need to be consciously aware that we need to prioritize our people before we prioritize wealth. And we need to look at it in terms of the fact that, if we can't make someone redundant for AI, we need to look at repurposing to value add so that we still maintain the status quo in terms of employment. So that is a concern as a leader. I think I'm concerned about where AI is going to go, but I think it has some very positive implementations in the space. I think cruising specifically is an area that has an enormous amount of ingenuity and technological advancements. I mean, if you think 1912, the Titanic, to where you are today in 2025 is only 112 years, 113 years. And the level of advancement that you've had in technology is a quantum leap in terms of where you are. And I think a lot of that technological advancement is actually going towards the realm of sustainability, because you're talking about what biofuels, what carbon neutral fuels are you looking at? How are you putting anti-fouling paint on the bottom of the vessel to stop barnacles from getting there? It creates drag. How are you creating efficient waste management, water treatment facilities, energy treatment? So, World America and World Europa, two of our big flagships that have been released, have this wonderful facility where it's LNG powered. So the LNG is obviously the cleanest carbon. It's still carbon, but it's the cleanest carbon that's readily available. And the heat from the generators is used to heat your geyser in your bathroom and used to heat the facilities in the kitchen that allow you to cook. So you're not utilizing that energy more than what you're reusing the facility to go and do it. And that technological advancement goes towards creating, this better environmental impact kind of scenario. And then looking at, paperless environments, apps, those kind of things that generate a little bit more connectivity within the modern world, but also save on the paper footprint that we have. So, I think tourism as a whole as well, I think is quite ingenious, but, coupled with the challenge we face in South Africa of employment, I also believe that tourism is a fundamental opportunity and gateway industry for alleviating our unemployment rate, because you don't need to have a degree or a professional qualification to be hospitable, and you don't need to be, well qualified to engage with people and explain your country and your culture, and to invite people to where you are. So it's a good opportunity for us to utilize that kind of environment in that space. So, I think, tourism as general, very innovative. But not only on the technological side, but also on the people front. And then cruising specific, I think, is one of the biggest technological advancements in all of the areas that they're talking about. I mean, World America and World Europa will produce its own water, manage its own waste, itself through fuels, but clean as is possible. Okay, and then all of the other technological advancements around the sustainability footprint, making it as limited carbon impact as possible. So, those are some of the areas that the focal point is in, and we're looking at other fuel sources, hydrogen fuels, those kind of things in terms of, what's possible, and we're at the cutting edge of those kind of environments with our stakeholders and suppliers.
Yeah, lovely. I travel a little bit, not as much as you, and every time we travel with people for work, etc., they often sort of go, "Yo, I appreciate South Africa more now." I wonder what a word or two might you say to South Africans in particular, to what could we do to kind of enhance tourism for a country, and what are some of the things maybe we might be doing that might not be as helpful?
What's the audience of this? I mean, where's this going? So I think South Africa as a country, but Africa as a continent it's an amazing continent and an amazing country. Our resilience as a people is second to none. Whatever our creed, whatever our color, whatever we are resilient if nothing else. I think for me, there's a problem with brand SA. And when I talk brand SA, I'm not talking about the company brand SA, I'm talking about brand South Africa. And last week in the Oval Office, we didn't do ourselves a lot of justice in terms of changing the narrative of brand SA. What do tourists want? They want security, they want a beautiful place, they want value for money, and they want hospitable people. We've got 3 of the 4. But our negative is security, and it's the biggest problem that we face. How do we secure people? But further to that is, how do we make our citizenry safe? Because a safe citizenry is a happy citizenry that will welcome people. So we've got to look at our fundamental promise to our citizens to secure them and make them feel safe, because they will then promote South Africa. Your worst advocate of South Africa is someone who's just immigrated, because they need to justify why they've left the country. And there might be valid reasons why they have. There's no dispute in terms of that. But they're wanting to promote their brand of where they've gone, not the brand that's happened.
Sure.
And last week in the Oval Office, we highlighted we've got a crime problem. Okay, we have some disunity amongst the population. Okay, because there's feeding a narrative that isn't entirely true.
Yeah.
Okay, And what are we doing about it? Well, we don't know. We don't know the solution. And that for me is we've got to change that marketing strategy, because we have so much in the way of natural resources, not only, Cape Town, Durban, Kraaifontein, Polokwane, wherever you want to go, there's absolute wonderful place to see. And people are amazing. South Africans are great, friendly people. Wherever I go, I enjoy South Africans, because we have such a passion for life and a passion for wanting to do things. So we've got to find a way as a priority for security. And I believe it's the only real thing that South Africans can't change themselves. So if you take a look at the electricity crisis, we as South Africans in the last 5 years have created enough solar power for one power station, the equivalent of one power station. We've done it ourselves. So we're fixing the problem. Water, we can sort of try and fix it. We can fix a lot of things, but security isn't one of them. Because we can't just walk into the streets and do what might need to be done. We need the police and the security services to help out. So that really is step number one. And step number two thereafter is to change the brand narrative of South Africa outside the borders. So what do people see? But we've got to make sure that we create that right narrative.
Excellent. I am with you. I'm with you 100%. Now, as we move towards the conclusion, I'm curious about MSC Cruise. I imagine not everyone has had the pleasure to go on a cruise. Maybe just unashamedly kind of tell us about MSC Cruise. What are the services? Why should someone consider a cruise over any other mode of travel, and what's happening there? Why specifically MSC?
So just from a company perspective, I think it's an incredibly authentic company. It's family run, and I think that allows us to be very authentically open with what we do. And no place is perfect, but the organization is an incredibly passionate and well put together organization that has a lot of passionate people working for it. In terms of cruising, cruises for me offer a one-stop shop. With all the travels I did, one of the biggest challenges I faced was unpacking more than once. So, I've got to go today to Geneva, and then I've got to go to London, and then I've got to go here. And while a lot of people who haven't traveled will say to you, but that's such a first world problem to have. It is, but it gets tiring after a while unpacking 4 or 5 times on a trip. So, going on the cruise offers you that one-stop shop in terms of I'm there and my hotel's moving with me. So I don't have to worry. I'm there. It's all sorted. Secondly, there's this concept that, hotels, yes, I got this great price for a hotel, but all the ancillary costs associated with that travel that haven't been factored in start to creep up on your budget. So your meals, your entertainment, your transport, your whatever is the situation starts to add up into that process. So from a value proposition perspective, a cruise represents something that is unparalleled in value proposition in terms of hotels. Because you're getting, if you compare like with like, you're going to get more bang for your buck than you are going to get in any other space, because your entertainment is included, your food is included, all of it, and you can eat yourself for 22 hours. It's why I look like the Pillsbury Donut, because I eat all the time. So you can eat all you like, and you can eat all day. Your drinks, obviously, you pay, but you can obviously mitigate and cap that in terms of packages that you buy, and your hotel moves. So you get this destination or multiple destinations without having to consider everything. And my kind of holiday is you wake up in the morning and you think, well, what do I have to do? How do I entertain the kids today? Sure. It becomes a stressful environment. And actually the holiday isn't a holiday because you're running around after your kids and enjoying it. Whereas the cruise, they're quite happy not to see you, because they're quite happy to run around on the ship and do their own thing. You can track them on the app with the modern technology, and you may even have to go and find them for their curfew, because they've sort of said, we're having too much fun. So you get an opportunity to really relax, and you don't have to plan anything because it's there. Okay, tomorrow we're going to be in Rome. Marvelous. I want to go and see this. I go see that. Great. You've got something. But the next day I'm at sea. I can relax and I can enjoy my my day at the pool. And kids and whoever can go and do whatever they want. I can come for dinners and I can have good quality family time around the table and have a conversation, because it's such an intimate, closed environment. If you've got kids, they run around, oh, I'm going to go with this friend, or I'm going to go here, or I'm going to go here. And they wind up, driving your life rather than having you driving theirs. So that gives you an opportunity of a closed environment, very family orientated, very sort of orientated around quality time and relaxing. And that for me is the value of cruising. It really is something that should be considered. And it takes you to destinations that you would find prohibitively expensive to go to.
Oh, lovely. I think everyone is booking their tickets now. And these packages are affordable, Ross?
Yeah. So, I mean, we offer 3-night cruises, 4 nights, 12 nights, or 14 nights in South Africa this year, and a Christmas cruise, which is 7 nights. Average, you're looking at sort of for a 3-night cruise for 2 people, probably between 12 and 15 grand. And then for 4-night, between 15 and 20. And then it gets a little bit more expensive. But even looking at an international cruise, and just for reference point, if I take a family of 4 to Mauritius in Christmas, over Christmas and New Year, I'm going to spend $250,000 rand.
Of course.
If I go on a cruise for 4 people in the same 14-day period, I'll spend half that.
No way.
Yeah. So there's the value proposition. Okay. And the caliber of hotels is I'm comparing like with like. Now I go on a 7-night cruise out of Europe and I go and price. Well, if I was to fly to Rome and then go to Barcelona and then go to Palma de Mallorca and then come back again, what would I spend from an accommodation perspective and everything like that? And you're looking at probably 100 to 125,000 rand. You can find hot deals on cruises, not only MSC, but MSC specific, in the region of 40 to 45,000 rand if you've got the right deal, and probably in the region of about 80 to 100. So you're saving yourself a lot of money. So the value proposition of cruising is fundamentally important. And yes, people will probably be doing the calculation, say, oh, Ross, you're lying. You didn't say the truth. This is given a set of parameters that you're looking at, comparing a set of things together. You're going to find that cruising is going to come out cheaper and more value for money.
Oh, excellent. Lovely. We ask our guests these last 2 questions. One is for you to recommend a book or 2 to add to my bookshelf. And 2 is if there's sort of one challenge after someone has been inspired by so much that you've shared, and there was just sort of one message, one challenge to say, hey, I encourage everyone to go start doing 1, 2, 3, or just anything. I appreciate that. So a book recommendation and a challenge.
I got 3 for you.
Okay.
So Long Walk to Freedom, for obvious reasons. I think it's a great book on humility, and it's a great book on a life journey that leads to the culmination of an individual. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by, and I'm just trying to think.
John Maxwell.
It's John Maxwell. And then Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think.
Oh, lovely.
As well.
Excellent.
And my message to people is, it may look like it's easy, and it's the leaders of the world might make things look easy. And we always look at the likes of Warren Buffett and things like that and say, oh, they've had it easy and things like that. There's a lot of hard work that's gone behind it, a lot of hard work and determination. The only shortcut in life is hard work, in my opinion. It will get you there all the time. There are no other ways to find a shortcut in that space. If I recount the number of hours I've worked, the long times I've got to where I am, they are the reason why I'm successful, if you can consider me to be successful. And I put that in inverted commas because I don't see myself as successful. I see, there's a lot of other people that are way more successful. But at the heart of all of those success stories is hard work, preparation. You talk about outliers, the book, it also talks about 10,000 hours. It's impossible to get to 10,000 hours in your life because you'd be doing only work, but preparation and hard work gets you to where you need to be. And that is the overriding principle of what I would talk to people about all the time, is that is the only shortcut to success.
Oh, Ross, this has been incredibly awesome. Thank you so much.
So great privilege. Thank you very much. Lovely.